I slid into my husband's car and found a tube of personal lubricant tucked in the glove compartment. I didn't say a word. I quietly swapped it with industrial-grade superglue. What went down after that had the neighbors dialing 911 and the fire department tearing up our driveway. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching, hit like and subscribe. And drop a comment telling me where you're tuning into this revenge story from. I want to see how far it travels. I sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house thick as early morning fog. An uninvited guest that never seemed to leave. The old wall clock, my late mother's wedding gift, clicked along with a steady, guilty beat. Each tick a reminder that the life I'd built might be nothing but a gorgeous, well-polished lie. My husband, Jack, had just rolled in from yet another business dinner. He looked not just tired, but haunted, like a man lugging around a secret that weighed a ton. His face told on him, new lines around his eyes and mouth, the kind stress carves when it's been camping there too long. He threw his jacket on the sofa with this dramatic, performative slump, loosened his tie like it was a noose he couldn't wait to ditch, then crashed onto the bed without so much as a shower. His fancy cologne still hung in the air, but it rode shotgun with a sweet, floral scent that sure as heck wasn't mine, a bold, tacky confession from a life I apparently wasn't part of. A few minutes later, his snoring kicked in, once a comfort, now a lullaby for fools. I stood up, moving with the practiced quiet of a wife of 40 years, and started tidying the trail he'd left. Jacket, wallet, cell phone, that old laptop. His phone screen was still lit, a new email glowing like a bad omen. Weird. Jack hates email. He always grumbles. Mags, all that tech is a headache. I'll just call. And yet, there it was. Curiosity won. I opened it. You were incredible tonight, Dad. A little red heart, like a knife. I froze. Dad. The word echoed in my skull. Who the hell was calling him that, in that tone? I scrolled for more, thumb shaking, but there wasn't a breadcrumb to chase. Just a weird burner-looking address. A chill rippled through me. Not from cold, but from that bone-deep dread that says, "Girl, your gut's been right all along." I glanced toward the bedroom. Jack rolled over with a sputtering snore, face calm and peaceful, infuriatingly calm, while a storm ripped through me. My heart hammered like I'd stolen something. I set the phone down exactly where it had been, hands shaking hard enough to drop it. Then I kept cleaning, robotic now. I grabbed his pants for the laundry and felt a crisp fold in the pocket. A receipt from a fancy steakhouse in San Antonio. Dated tonight. San Antonio? He told me he was in Dallas. I let out a dry little laugh. Jack hates driving to Dallas. But San Antonio? His old favorite, where his mom lived before she passed. The receipt said, "Party of 2, a pricey cab he'd once bought me for our 10th anniversary. Unforgettable, and entrees of filet and pasta." I tried to remember the last time he took me someplace like that. Maybe a decade ago when I opened my first bakery. Candlelight, his proud smile, that sweet toast to my win. Now the memory felt counterfeit, pretty but fake. I snapped photos of the receipt and the email. I didn't want to believe any of it, but a wife's intuition, 40 years deep, is no joke. Something was off, and I had to know what. My hands shook with anger and this gnawing existential dread, like I was standing at the edge of a cliff waiting to watch my whole life cave in. In the garage, his old SUV was still warm. Gasoline hung in the air, along with that same sweet perfume clinging to his clothes. I opened the door, a cold knot tightening in my gut, and swept my flashlight across every corner of the cabin. Driver's side, just loose change and an empty water bottle. Then I popped the glove box on the passenger side. My fingers bumped something slick and plasticky. I pulled it out, and my heart stuttered. A used tube of lube, residue crusted around the cap. A sticky little smoking gun. Jack and I hadn't been intimate in years. He always said he was tired, or that getting older cooled things down. So who was this for? Every syllable of that question rang like a hammer on glass. I put it back exactly where I found it. Wiped my hands with a napkin, scrubbing like I could erase the betrayal itself. I kept searching, slow, methodical. Under the back seat, I found crumpled napkins drenched in that floral perfume, not a man's scent, and definitely not my soft rose. It felt like a loud, vulgar shout of infidelity in the quiet of our garage. I photographed everything, the lube, the napkins, like I could bottle the smell inside a picture. I shut the car and went back in, the evidence pressing down on me heavier than any flour sack I'd ever hauled. Back at the table, I picked up Jack's phone again. At this point, I was almost sure. Messages? Just bland work chats, dry as desert gravel. Inbox? Empty except for that one email. Sent in drafts. Clean as a whistle. Too clean. Suspiciously clean. Like a pro had sanitized it. My rage cooled into something dense and heavy in my chest. And underneath that, a sharper need rose up, truth. I wanted the truth, even if it burned the house down. Morning light slid through the curtains. I'd barely slept. I fried 2 eggs, toasted bread, poured his strong black coffee. Jack shuffled in, hair a wreck, eyes still foggy. He took a sip and set the cup down half full. "Big meeting today," he muttered, the same well-worn line without meeting my eyes. "Might be home late." He was good, I'll give him that. Easy lies, casual tone. It chilled me. I forced a smile when what I really wanted was to say, "Where, Jack? Dallas or San Antonio again?" Instead, I swallowed it. "All right. Be careful." He patted my shoulder like a man tapping a stranger at a crosswalk, then left. The door clicked shut, and the silence came roaring back. I washed the dishes one by one, the rhythm a tiny anchor in a rising storm. Guessing games weren't going to cut it. I needed proof. I scrolled my contacts and found the number for Mrs. Bennett, a friend from way back who'd helped me when I opened the bakery. Years ago, she'd said, "If you ever need it, I've got a solid PI, Tom Harris, discreet, reliable." I never thought I'd make that call. Now I had no choice. I dialed, voice trembling. "Mrs. Bennett, can you put me in touch with Tom? I need him." A pause on her end, heavy, knowing. "Maggie, what's going on?" "Did Jack?" I exhaled, pride smarting like a fresh bruise. "I just need the truth. Please." She didn't push. An hour later, a text came in. "Meet at noon, small cafe downtown. Mrs. Carter, please don't worry. I'll help." Noon found me tucked in a corner of a worn little cafe that smelled like roasted beans and old stories. Comforting, usually. Today it felt strange. Tom walked in, middle-aged, stocky, light blue shirt, thoughtful eyes that looked like they saw through paint. I handed him a flash drive with the photos, the email, the steakhouse receipt, the tube, the napkins. "It's all I've got," I said, voice shaky. "I think my husband's cheating on me." The words tasted like ash. He nodded, scrolling through the files, face unreadable. He jotted notes in a small notebook and said, "Mrs. Carter, I understand. I'll start tailing Mr. Carter this afternoon. I'll update you ASAP." I swallowed hard, holding back tears that burned. "Thank you. I just want the truth, whatever it is." He gave me a small, kind look. "Go home, act normal. Don't tip him off." I left and slipped into the flow of pedestrians, feeling lonelier than I had in my entire life. 40 years of marriage, my whole world built on trust, now cracking under my feet. Jack had been my rock, my anchor. And here I was hiring a stranger to follow him. What a joke. That night at the bakery, surrounded by the warm, yeasty perfume of dough and sugar, I was going through delivery invoices when my phone buzzed. A message from Tom. My heart went from 0 to 60. A photo of Jack, in that same light blue shirt, walking into a high-end restaurant, holding hands with a woman. I pinched to zoom and my heart just dropped. It was Brianna, my daughter-in-law. Tight black dress, heavy makeup, bold red lipstick, hair down. They didn't look like in-laws. They looked like a couple on a date, bodies angled toward each other like a shared secret sat between them. More photos came in. A secluded corner table, candles, flowers. Brianna leaning in, smiling. Jack toasting her with a soft gaze I hadn't seen in decades. In 40 years, he'd never looked at me like that. Not since I was the girl from San Diego with long hair and a smile that lit up a room. That look, it wasn't mine anymore. It was hers. Around 2 a.m., a video hit my phone. I slipped on headphones and pressed play with shaking hands. Brianna leaned into Jack's ear and whispered something that made him laugh, loud, carefree, like a stranger's laugh. Her voice was syrupy, her eyes glittering in the restaurant light. They stood. Jack opened the car door for her, all chivalry like she was his date and he was her man. I watched it again. And again. Yeah, I knew I was torturing myself. I couldn't stop Brianna, the woman I'd treated like a daughter, taught to make our family flan. And Jack, the man I'd given my life to, the father of our son, Evan. What were they doing behind my back? Behind Evan's back? The questions hit like a tidal wave. I saved the photos and the video to a flash drive. I wrote down every detail. Date, time, place, the restaurant's name. My hands worked on autopilot while my mind spun out. I didn't want to believe they were capable of something so low, so cruel. But the evidence sat there, plain as day, undeniable. I stayed late at the bakery, surrounded by trays of sweet pastries that smelled like comfort, but nothing felt sweet. I remembered the early days when Jack would help me haul flour sacks. We used to laugh in that tiny kitchen, our dreams bigger than the sky. Now, all I could hear was that clock's merciless tick and the echo of a single word from that email, Dad, ringing through the ruins of what I thought was my life. Now it all seemed like a distant memory, a beautiful lie I had lived for too long. The next morning, I was in the small kitchen of the bakery, holding a list of orders for a large hotel downtown. The smell of flour and vanilla, which always brought me peace, felt empty that day, a hollow comfort. As soon as I finished signing the delivery invoice, my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I wiped my hands and my heart sank when I saw it was a message from the detective. Just a short sentence. Mrs. Carter, I'm sending you more evidence. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my hands trembled as I opened the message. A series of photos appeared on the screen. The first showed Jack in his usual gray shirt, leaving a law office near the main plaza. By his side was Brianna in a beige office dress, her hair in a high ponytail, and huge dark sunglasses that almost covered her face. A pathetic attempt at anonymity. They were walking very close together, not like in-laws, but like a couple, their bodies a testament to their forbidden bond. In the next photo, they were standing in front of a 4-star hotel with gleaming glass doors and a gold sign. I zoomed in, desperately looking for some sign to deny what I was seeing, but there was nothing. They looked too natural, too comfortable together, a part of a world I was not a part of. Then came a short video from Tom. I pressed play and my heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst, a frantic drum against my ribs. The shot was from a distance, but it was clear enough to see Jack and Brianna on the 3rd-floor balcony of the hotel. His arm was around her waist, and she was resting her head on his shoulder, her long hair moving softly in the wind. And then, like a stab, I saw them share a quick kiss without trying to hide. It was a brief kiss, but it was enough to burn away the last spark of hope I had left. I replayed the video frame by frame, each image digging deeper into my soul, a slow, agonizing descent into hell. The room curtain opened slightly, and Brianna came out, running to hug Jack. Her face lit up with happiness, as if she were a young girl in love. I slumped into the chair, clutching the edge of the table to keep from falling apart. Tom wrote, "They also rented the room for the afternoon. It looks like they're staying the night. I'll keep an eye on them." I read the message over and over, my throat tight, as if I were being strangled. Just a few hours earlier, Jack had written to me, "Maggie, I won't be home tonight. I have to meet a potential partner from out of town. Get some rest." The tone was sweet and caring, just as it had been for years. But now I knew it was all a lie. A well-constructed lie. A potential partner from out of town. He wasn't out of town. He was here in a 4-star hotel with our own daughter-in-law. Yeah, that tracks. I opened my portable hard drive and carefully saved every photo and every video. Each time I hit save, I looked at the image as if to make sure I wasn't dreaming. In the video, Jack's gaze toward Brianna was so tender. The way he caressed her hair reminded me of the way he used to do it with me more than 30 years ago. We were young, and I believed our love would last forever. a promise whispered under a starry San Diego sky. Now seeing this, all I saw was lies and blatant betrayal. I remembered family gatherings, everyone sitting around the table, a tableau of our perfect family. Brianna always sat far away from Jack. Sometimes she even looked at him with disgust. Evan would joke, "Mom, I think Brianna can't stand Dad. She avoids him like the plague." I believed it too. I thought they just didn't get along, that she was just trying to fit into the family. But now I understood it had all been a farce, a carefully choreographed dance of deception. They acted too well in front of me, in front of Evan, in front of the whole neighborhood. I felt like a fool, a blind wife, betrayed by two traitors right in front of my eyes. People were going about their lives unaware of what was happening on that hotel balcony. But Tom had captured the perfect moment like a silent hunter, a snapshot of my reality. I replied to him, "Thank you. Please keep watching. I need to know everything." He answered briefly, "I will. Stay calm. You've got this." That night, I returned to the house that had been my home with Jack. It felt foreign now, a place of ghosts and lies. I opened the dresser drawer and took out a thick envelope, my hands moving with a grim determination. I printed all the evidence, photos of Jack and Brianna leaving the lawyer's office, photos of them entering the hotel, photos of them on the balcony, and every frame of the video. I carefully arranged them, sealed the envelope, and hid it at the bottom of the drawer under old family photos. I looked at a photo of the four of us, Jack, Brianna, Evan, and me at Evan's birthday party a few years ago. Brianna was smiling, hugging Evan tightly, while Jack stood beside me with his arm on my shoulder, looking proud. Now looking at it, all I wanted was to rip it to pieces, to tear the image of their smiling faces from my life. The next morning, just before dawn, I heard the front door open slowly. Jack staggered in, smelling of alcohol. "The partner was too difficult, Maggie," he complained in a raspy voice, his eyes red as if he'd been up all night. "I had to drink a lot. I'm dead tired." I was in the kitchen with a glass of water in my hand, watching him perform while feeling like he was rubbing salt in a wound. "Rest," I replied calmly as always, the practiced voice of a wife. "You have to go to work tomorrow." He nodded, gave me a pat on the shoulder as if nothing had happened, and dragged himself to the bedroom. Minutes later, he was snoring peacefully as if he'd never cheated on me, as if he'd never gone to a hotel with our own daughter-in-law. When I was sure Jack was asleep, my phone vibrated. It was a call from the detective, Tom. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if he feared someone would overhear him. "Mrs. Carter," I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. "I used special equipment. They didn't even notice. I'm sending it to you now." My heart pounded hard, but I simply replied, "Thank you, Tom. Send me the file." Minutes later, an audio file appeared in my messages. I put on my headphones, sat at the table, and pressed play. The first thing I heard was Brianna's voice, cold and ambitious, a stranger's voice. "Dad, hurry up with that fake contract. I want to have that whole chain of stores already. I want that old hag out of the house." I felt a blow to my chest and gripped the phone tightly. Then came Jack's voice, deep and confident. "Don't worry about those papers. Maggie doesn't know anything. Leave it in my hands. She trusts me too much." It felt like a knife twisting in my heart. They weren't just cheating on me. They were planning to take everything I had built. The bakery chain, all the sweat, tears, and sleepless nights, baking every batch, running all over town to make deliveries to keep my reputation. It was all mine. Jack never once got his hands dirty in the kitchen. He never worked the counter or signed contracts with hotels. And now he and Brianna wanted to take it all away. To kick me out of the house I had made a home. I almost broke down, but I still had the composure to copy the audio to the flash drive, where I kept the other evidence. I carefully wrote down the time and place as if trying to keep myself steady in the middle of the storm. The next morning, as I made coffee in the bakery, my phone vibrated again. Tom sent another batch of new photos taken with a telephoto lens. In them, Jack and Brianna were inside his car with a thick pile of papers in front of them. Brianna had a red pen and was marking the document intently. Jack, next to her, nodded and smiled as if he were in full agreement. Tom wrote, "I overheard something. It seems they want to use a contact at the notary's office to make the transfer." "I'll investigate further." I zoomed in on the photo. I could see the letters on the paper, though I couldn't read them. But I knew these weren't normal work papers. They were planning to steal everything I had worked for, step by step. I sat there among the trays of sweet pastries that smelled so delicious, but I felt as if my whole world was collapsing. I reopened the audio file, put on my headphones, and listened to every phrase, every word they said. That wretched old woman. That's what Brianna called me. I remembered the days when she had just joined the family. When I taught her how to make rice, when I hugged her like a daughter, I thought she was part of the family, that she would be the woman who, along with Evan, would build a future. And Jack, the man I had loved since I was a girl in San Diego, who swore he would be with me until the end. They had made a joke of me, a fool who still believed in love and family. A regular customer came in, Mrs. Peterson, who always bought pastries for her grandchildren. "Maggie, your bakery has been packed lately. Your chain of stores is expanding." "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice warm. I forced a smile and replied, "Thank you. I'm doing my best." But inside, I was a wreck. I wondered what she would think if she knew the truth. Would she see me as a strong woman, or just a fool betrayed by her husband and daughter-in-law? I wrapped Mrs. Peterson's pastries, said goodbye at the door, and sank into my chair, my hands on my head. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, a silent rage burned inside me like the fire in an oven, ready to ignite at any moment. No joke, Texas-sized fury. That night at dinner, I sat across from Jack in the small kitchen under the yellow light that gave his face a strange, distorted glow. He ate and spoke in a monotone voice, as if nothing were wrong, as if the world wasn't about to end for him. "Maggie, I have to sign some important business papers this week. Maybe you should look them over. They're complicated." I picked up a piece of bread and pretended to take a bite, but in my head I could only hear Brianna's voice from the recording. "Dad, hurry up and sign the fake contracts." I knew he was testing the waters. He wanted to drag me into his dirty plan. I gave him a dry smile, a facade of a wife who was too tired to argue, and replied, "Yes, I'll look at them later. I'm tired now." He nodded, took a sip of wine, looking at me as if nothing were wrong. But I knew that behind that smile was a man ready to take everything I had built. A predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Jack had a few more glasses of wine. His face turned red, and he started slurring his words about a difficult client he'd seen that day. I nodded as if I were listening, but inside I wanted to scream, "Do you think I'm that stupid?" When he got up, staggering, and went to the bedroom, I cleared the table, my every move slow, containing the anger that was boiling inside me. He threw himself on the bed, snoring loudly, and left his car keys on the nightstand, gleaming under the dim light, a siren's call to my revenge. I stared at them, my heart pounding in my chest. This was my chance, my moment. I entered the bedroom slowly, careful not to make a sound. Every step felt like walking between pain and resolve, between the past and a new unknown future. I grabbed the keys, squeezed them tight, and went straight to the garage. The night was quiet, hushed, as if the world was holding its breath. All I could hear were crickets outside, their chirping a soundtrack to my silent fury. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The weak light illuminated Jack's old SUV, a silent accomplice in his betrayal. I opened the door. The smell of gasoline was still there, mixed with a strange, sweet perfume. I opened the glove compartment between the seats, and there it was, the tube of lubricant with a loose cap and dried residue on the edge, a monument to their infidelity. Game on. I held it in my hand, feeling like I was holding a dirty secret. It was clear they had used it again, as if it were confirmation that Jack and Brianna were still playing their secret game, their twisted little dance. I took the tube of lubricant to the kitchen, placed it on the counter, and washed my hands with lemon soap. I scrubbed them thoroughly as if to erase every trace of the betrayal I had just touched. The fresh scent didn't calm my anger, but it helped me stay focused. I opened the tool drawer and took out a tube of clear industrial superglue, the same kind I once used to fix a chair at the bakery. It was a tool of my trade, now a weapon of my revenge. I carefully unscrewed the cap of the lubricant and filled the tube with the glue, drop by drop, until it was completely full. I wiped the nozzle, shook it gently to mix it, and tested a little. It came out smoothly, just like the original lubricant. At a glance, no one would notice the difference. I smiled faintly, though a hurricane was raging inside me. This wasn't a game. It was the first step to getting justice. I put the tube back in the glove compartment, adjusted the floor mat and the seat just as they were, as if no one had touched anything before closing the car. I opened the trunk to check. There were only crumpled bags, an empty water bottle, and an unused condom lying in a corner. My heart skipped a beat, but I wasn't surprised anymore. I took pictures with my phone, adding them to the growing collection of evidence. Each image was another piece, a reminder that I couldn't let Jack and Brianna get away with their lies. Back in the house, I put the keys back in their place next to Jack's alarm clock. I grabbed an old book and sat on the living room sofa pretending to read. The dim light fell on the pages, but I couldn't read a word. My head was spinning. I thought of Evan, my son, who believed he was living happily with Brianna without knowing the truth. How could I tell him that his wife and his own father were betraying us? I thought of the bakery chain, of the 40 years of work and sleepless nights, of all the fights with Jack to defend my dream. He never really understood it, but I trusted that he supported me. Now I knew he was just waiting for the right moment to take everything. An hour later, Jack woke up and stumbled into the kitchen for water. He saw the keys on the counter and didn't suspect a thing. "Still not sleeping, Maggie?" he asked groggily. I smiled and replied, "No, I'm just reading a bit. Finish your water and go back to bed." He nodded, drank, and returned to the bedroom, snoring immediately. I looked at him as if he were a stranger. This man, who once promised to be with me until the end, was now planning to destroy what I loved most. But he didn't know that I had already started my counterattack. At dawn, I got up. The sunlight was timidly entering through the bakery window. I was in my usual kitchen, kneading dough, preparing flans and sweet pastries for a large hotel order. I pressed the dough with all my might, channeling my rage into every movement. When I returned home for breakfast, I made an effort to keep a calm face. Jack was already up with a cup of black coffee in his hand. I served him eggs and toast. "Jack," I said calmly, "I have to travel to Nashville tomorrow to sign a contract with a new partner. I'm sure I'll be home late. Can you take care of dinner?" I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He looked up surprised, but in his eyes something was shining that wasn't concern. It was relief. "A big contract?" he asked, taking my hand with a feigned tenderness. "Don't worry, go ahead. I'll handle it." But that spark in his eyes, that slight curve of his lips, as if a weight had been lifted, pierced my chest. He wanted me to leave, and I knew exactly why. I smiled and nodded. "Thanks. I'll call you if I get back late." He took another sip of coffee. Then he got up, saying he had to get to the office early. As he left, I saw he had left his phone on the table and the screen lit up with a missed call. The name that appeared was Brianna C. I frowned. My heart pounded. Brianna Carter. I was sure it was her. Before I could touch the phone, Jack came back, grabbed it in a hurry and turned off the screen in front of me. "I forgot it," he mumbled with a forced smile. And he was gone. I stood there watching the door close, feeling as if I'd been slapped. He wasn't even bothering to hide it anymore. That day I worked like a machine, delivering bread, signing invoices, and smiling at customers. But my mind was only focused on Jack and Brianna. I couldn't let them continue their farce behind my back and Evan's. I needed more evidence to hear from their own mouths what they said when they thought no one was listening. That night I pretended to be tired. I went to bed early and told Jack, "I have to wake up early tomorrow to catch the bus, so I'm going to sleep." He nodded, gave me a pat on the shoulder. "Rest, Maggie. Be careful on your trip tomorrow." I lay down and closed my eyes, but I sharpened my hearing, attentive to every sound in the house. Close to midnight, when Jack's snoring stopped, I heard him get out of bed quietly. The faint light from his phone shone in the darkness. He left the room with his phone, thinking I was asleep. I stayed still, my heart pounding. Then I slowly got up and followed him on tiptoe. I hid behind the thick living room curtain and saw him standing in a dark corner near the window. He put the phone to his ear and spoke softly. "Yes, of course. Come over to the house tomorrow. We won't have to go to a hotel anymore. Maggie has to leave town to sign a contract, and she'll be back late." I heard a soft giggle from the other side, Brianna's sweet voice. "That's great, Dad. Finally, we can relax." Jack laughed, replying, "Yeah, come early. I'll be waiting." I stood there behind the curtain, feeling my blood boil. They weren't just cheating on me. They were planning to turn my house, my son's home, and mine into their meeting place. I returned to the bedroom in silence, opened a drawer, and took out Evan's old recorder, the one I bought him for college to record his classes. I checked the battery, put in a new one, and turned on continuous recording. I hid it behind the bookshelf in the bedroom next to the headboard, certain it would capture everything. I carefully adjusted the cable and covered it with a family photo frame. The photo of the four of us at Evan and Brianna's wedding. Looking at it, I felt a bitter taste. Brianna's smile, Jack's hug. Now they were all lies. Before going back to bed, I checked again that the recorder was working. I placed the photo frame just right to hide the cable. Then I lay down, pretending to be asleep. Jack came back to the bedroom, threw himself on the bed, and snored as if nothing were wrong. But my eyes were wide open in the darkness, more awake than ever. I reached for the clock and set the alarm for earlier than usual. I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I was ready for the next step of my plan. I woke up at 5 in the morning when it was still dark. Only the faint light from the streetlights was coming through the window. The house was silent. All I could hear was Jack's steady snoring from the bedroom. I was in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee in my hand, staring at the skillet of oil that was already on the stove. It was the last step of my plan, a simple smoke trap, but enough to expose the truth. I tied a thin string to the stove's igniter. I ran it over to the window and attached it to a heavy object, an old coffee can I found in the cabinet. All I had to do was pull it from a distance, and the flame would ignite the oil, creating thick black smoke, enough to alarm the neighbors. I opened the window by the stove a little so the smoke could get out. Then I tested it once. The smoke rose quickly, forming spirals like a warning. I turned it off immediately, checked everything again, and made sure not to leave any trace that might make Jack suspicious. I put on a jacket, grabbed my large purse, and pretended to be leaving for my trip. Before I left, I went into the bedroom and gently shook Jack. "I have to go to the bus station right now," I said in a calm voice. "I'm going to sign a contract. I'll probably be back late tonight." He opened his eyes and in a sleepy voice replied, "All right, be careful, Maggie. Call me if you need anything." Then he buried his face in his pillow and went back to sleep. I looked at the man I once loved and trusted. Now lying there unaware of the trap waiting for him, I turned away, my heart heavy, but my legs steady. Instead of going to the station, I went across the street to Mrs. Peterson's house. She was my neighbor and my friend. She opened the door and looked at me, worried when she saw my purse. "Maggie, what are you doing up so early?" "Is something wrong?" she asked with affection. I forced a smile. "Mrs. Peterson, can I stay here for a few hours?" I need to watch my house." She frowned, but didn't say anything else. She poured me a hot cup of coffee and gave me a chair by the window. From there, I could see the entrance to my house where Jack and Brianna would enter and where the truth would be revealed. Around 10 Tau, a taxi pulled up in front of the house. Brianna got out wearing a light floral dress and dark sunglasses as if she were afraid someone would recognize her. Jack opened the door, looked around in a hurry, and quickly ushered her inside. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, my heart pounding in my chest. "It's time," I murmured and turned on the app on my phone connected to the hidden recorder I had left in the bedroom. The sound started coming through my headphones. Brianna's laughter, the clinking of glasses, heavy footsteps. Then I heard Jack's deep voice. "All right, we don't have to hide in a hotel anymore." Brianna laughed. "You really know how to pick your moments. The old hag is gone, right?" I bit my lips, holding back the rage as I listened to her call me the old hag with so much contempt. Then the bed started to creak along with other sounds I didn't want to keep listening to. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, "Just a little longer, Maggie. Just a little longer." A few minutes later, suddenly, Brianna screamed, "What the hell is this? We're stuck." Her voice was filled with panic, almost sobbing. Jack growled, "Shut up." "Wait, let me see." I smiled. I barely touched my phone and activated the smoke trap remotely. The string pulled hard. The stove ignited. The skillet of oil caught fire. Black smoke billowed out of the kitchen window in thick spirals, spreading outside like an alarm signal. Mrs. Peterson gasped. She looked out the window. "Maggie, your house is on fire." I pretended to be scared, but inside I felt strangely calm. Neighbors started coming out into their yards, shouting, "Maggie's house is on fire. Call the firefighters." A man nearby, Mr. Miller, quickly took out his phone and called the city fire department. I stayed there, holding my coffee cup tightly, my eyes fixed on my house. Everything was going according to plan. In my headphones, Brianna's voice sounded more and more desperate. "Jack, do something." "I can't move," Jack's voice roared. "Don't scream." "I'm trying." But I knew they couldn't do anything. The industrial superglue I had swapped was already at work, leaving them trapped at their most humiliating moment. I imagined them struggling, scared, and a part of me felt satisfied. Not because I was cruel, but because they had pushed me to this. They wanted to take my bakery, my family, even my honor. Now I would make them pay. I looked out the window. The smoke continued to rise, getting thicker. The neighbors were crowding together, yelling in a panic. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Where's Maggie?" "She went out of town for work." "That's what I heard," another replied. Mrs. Peterson, standing next to me, looked at me with suspicious eyes, but didn't say anything. She just squeezed my hand gently. I knew she had a hunch, but I didn't need to give her an explanation. The truth was about to explode, and I was ready. Just 10 minutes later, the siren of a fire truck sounded at the end of the street like a death knell. The red vehicle sped up and skidded to a stop in front of my house. I saw Evan jump out of the driver's seat in his fire chief uniform, his face tense. My son shouted in a firm voice, "Get the equipment ready quick. There might be people inside." I looked at him and felt a sharp pain. My son, always so proud of his family and his parents. Now he was about to face the cruelest truth. I wanted to run and hug him and say, "I'm sorry, Evan," but I had no other choice. I stayed still, letting everything take its course. The smoke from the kitchen continued to rise thickly, making Evan and his team believe there was a serious fire. My son led the way with a sledgehammer breaking down the front door. The sound of splintering wood echoed in the air. His teammates followed him with hoses and extinguishers. I listened to the commotion coming from the bedroom. Jack's desperate shouts mixed with Brianna's sobs. "Do something, Jack! I can't move!" Jack growled. "Shut up!" "Don't scream." I bit my lips, squeezing the phone where the app was still transmitting the audio from the hidden microphone. They were trapped, helpless, just as I had calculated. Evan entered the bedroom, and I could imagine what he found. His own father and his wife, naked, stuck to each other on the bed, their faces pale with pain and panic. I wasn't there, but through my headphones I heard Evan's voice falter. "What? What is this?" A firefighter behind him murmured in surprise, "Oh my God!" Another couldn't hold back and let out a nervous laugh, but Evan immediately shouted, "Silence!" I knew that cry wasn't just to maintain order, but my son's last attempt to hide his pain. The humiliation was now exposed not just to Evan, but to the entire fire team and the whole neighborhood. A firefighter ran out and told Evan, "Chief, the smoke is under control." It was just a small oil fire. Nothing serious, but Evan didn't reply. I figured the young man was still in the bedroom, frozen by what he was seeing. The neighbors started to arrive, crowding in front of the door, pointing and whispering. "What's happening?" "It's Jack and his daughter-in-law!" A woman shouted, her voice full of amazement. "Oh my God, how could this have happened?" Another chimed in. Mrs. Peterson, standing next to me, took out her phone and silently started recording. moving the camera closer to Jack and Brianna, who were writhing in bed, their faces contorted with pain. She looked at me with eyes full of pity and anger. "Maggie, you knew about this, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I just nodded softly without taking my eyes off the window. Evan came out of the bedroom. I heard the thud of his boots on the hardwood floor. Through the headset, I heard Jack shout in a raspy voice, "Get everyone out of here." "Close the door, Evan," but it was too late. The whole neighborhood was gathered, their faces showing disdain, their whispers sounding like a chorus of shame. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law caught in the act. "Unbelievable," a man exclaimed. "Poor Maggie. How did it come to this?" Another sighed. The firefighters, after a moment of hesitation, had to act. They wrapped sheets around Jack and Brianna, trying to cover their stuck-together bodies, and carried them out on stretchers. I could hear Brianna's broken sobs mixed with her groans of pain. "Please do something. I can't stand it anymore," Jack just mumbled weakly. "Don't let anyone see us." But the whole neighborhood had already seen. There were looks of revulsion, mocking laughs, and shakes of disappointed heads. They were carried out wrapped in a thin sheet amidst the growing murmurs. What a disgrace. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law. My God, how filthy. The crowd was still gathered at the entrance when the ambulance left with its siren blaring. Among the loud voices, I heard bursts of laughter. "What a show!" shouted Mr. Miller. "I can't believe there are two people so shameless in this world." An old woman shook her head and whispered to the person next to her, "Poor Maggie." I stood among the people, pretending to be surprised as if I had just run there from the bus station. Evan stood motionless in the yard, his arms hanging, his face pale as a ghost. His teammates avoided looking at him and quietly gathered their tools. I knew that Evan wasn't just shocked to see his father and his wife stuck together in bed, but by the double betrayal of the two people he loved most. I wanted to run and hug him, to tell him I was sorry for letting him see something like that, but I held back and walked behind Mrs. Peterson, who silently accompanied me to the hospital. We sat in the third-floor hallway waiting while I maintained the concerned look of a wife who had just found out her house had been on fire. Hours later, a doctor came out, sweat on his forehead. He looked at me and spoke in a low voice. "Mrs. Carter, we managed to separate them. Fortunately, there was no serious damage. They just need some skin ointment." I nodded, pretending to be relieved, while my fingers discreetly brushed against my purse where I had hidden 2 tubes of thick mustard I had prepared. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice trembling to hide my plans. "Can I see them?" He nodded and led me to the nurse's station where they gave me 2 tubes of ointment. The nurse, a young woman, looked at me with compassion. "Ma'am, this is a very difficult situation." "I'm so sorry." I gave a weak smile, and the moment she turned around, I swapped the tubes for the mustard I had in my purse. My hands moved quickly and confidently, as if I had rehearsed it hundreds of times in my head. I entered the hospital room with a tube of mustard in my hand, feigning concern. "Jack, Brianna, are you okay?" Brianna was in bed, her hair a mess, her eyes red, unable to look at me. Jack, still pale, mumbled, "Maggie, I can explain." But I didn't let him continue. I placed the tube of mustard on the table next to the bed and left. Minutes later, a gut-wrenching scream came from the room. Brianna was covering her face, crying. "It burns. My skin is on fire." Jack was writhing in bed, cursing. "What the hell is this? Who did this?" The entire hallway was in an uproar. Patients and family members came out to look. An old woman whispered to her son, "It's them." The couple from the video this morning on the internet. The father-in-law with the daughter-in-law. Another added, "They deserve it." The doctor ran into the room, asking the nurses to clean their skin and apply a neutralizing agent. But the humiliation of Jack and Brianna was already public, impossible to stop. Mrs. Peterson's video of them being carried out on a stretcher had spread throughout the neighborhood and on social media. I was in the hallway listening to the murmurs, feeling as if the whole world were witnessing the downfall of those 2 traitors. When the crowd dispersed, Evan entered the room with a thick folder in his hand. I had called him as soon as the ambulance left, asking him to get the envelope with the evidence I had saved in the drawer and the 2 divorce papers I had ready. He handed me the folder, his gaze empty, without saying a word. I opened it, took out the documents, and placed them on the table in front of Jack and Brianna. I looked at him directly in the eyes, my voice cold but firm. 40 years of marriage end here. Sign these and then do whatever you want as long as you disappear from my son's life and mine. Brianna collapsed, crying, looking at Evan. Honey, forgive me. I made a mistake. Please, I beg you, forgive me. But Evan just looked at her, his gaze as hard as stone, and left without saying a word. Jack tried to grab my hand, his voice trembling. Maggie, listen to me. I didn't want this. I pulled away, cutting him off. Don't say anything else, Jack. You chose this path. He yelled desperately, Maggie, please. But the nurse came in and warned, be quiet. This is a hospital. I turned and walked away without looking back. In the hallway, I saw Evan leaning against the wall, his head in his hands. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder, but he didn't lift his face. Mom, he whispered, his voice broken. Why did it have to be Dad? Why her? I didn't answer. I just hugged him tightly, sharing his pain with my own. In that moment, I knew that Jack and Brianna had lost everything, their honor, their marriage, even their dirty plan. But Evan and I had also lost a family. I only hoped that with time we would find peace. A few weeks after the scandal, my bakery was busier than ever. The little bell on the door wouldn't stop ringing. Customers came in and out with smiles and compliments. Maggie, you are so strong, Mrs. Peterson said, holding a bag of freshly baked flan. The whole neighborhood is proud of you for how you defended your family business amidst all that filth. I smiled and thanked her. People supported me. They called me a strong woman, but only I knew that strength came from the broken pieces of my heart. Every time I looked at the oven where I had worked with sweat and tears for 40 years, I remembered Jack and Brianna, who wanted to take everything from me, but failed. And I'm still here with my bakery, with Evan, and with a new life. Evan moved in with me right after that day. He didn't talk much about what had happened, but I noticed the change. He wasn't the cheerful, always laughing Evan he used to be. His eyes now looked deep, as if they carried a wound that wouldn't heal. Mom, I want to stay here for a while, he told me the first night as he came in with his suitcase. I'm going to help you run the bakery, talk to clients, whatever you need. I hugged him. I felt the warmth of the son I had raised and just nodded without asking anything. I knew Evan needed time, and so did I. Every morning we opened the bakery together. I prepared the oven and arranged the trays, and Evan reviewed invoices and called hotels and restaurants. Mom, the Grand Hotel wants to increase their sweet pastry order for next week, he called out to me from the cash register, his voice calm but without its usual brightness. All right, I replied. Confirm the order. I'll prepare more dough. These simple moments gave me a peace I hadn't felt in years. There were no more fake looks from Jack, no more sweet and calculating voice from Brianna. It was just Evan and me taking care of what we still had. Dinners were just the two of us now. We sat face to face in the small kitchen, eating simple meals, sometimes rice with beans and chicken, sometimes just bread with coffee. Mom, can you make me some flan this weekend? He asked me one night with a faint smile, the first I had seen since the scandal. All right, I replied, relieved, but you have to help me stir the caramel. He nodded, and in that moment, I felt that we were slowly but surely recovering. I started making time for myself, something I almost never did in 40 years. I joined a cooking club at the community center where women my age shared recipes and told their stories. Maggie, you make the best flan in the neighborhood, a woman told me, laughing when I brought a tray. I replied, smiling, it's a little trick I learned back in San Diego. I also started going to church on weekends. I would sit in silence with the light of the stained glass windows on my face and pray. Not for Jack or Brianna, but for Evan, for myself, so that we would find the strength to move forward. Sometimes I would go for walks with Mrs. Peterson in the town square, listening to her talk about neighborhood gossip. You know, Maggie, she would say, her eyes shining, everyone is still talking about Jack and Brianna, But they say you're the one who won. I just smiled without answering. I won, maybe. But the price was losing my whole family. Evan also started to change. He became less quiet and began telling me about his work as a firefighter. We put out a fire at the market yesterday, he told me one night as we ate dinner. It was really dangerous, Mom, but luckily no one got hurt. I listened to him, my heart filled with pride. Please be careful, I said, my voice trembling. You're all I have left. Evan looked at me with tenderness. Don't worry, Mom, I'll never leave you alone. Those words were like medicine. They gave me back the faith that even though I had lost so much, I still had my son who would always be with me. One afternoon, while the bakery was full of customers, I sat at the cash register watching the movement in the street. The bell on the door rang nonstop. The smell of sweet bread filled the air. I looked at the trays of flan and pastries and thought about the entire journey. I had built this bakery with my own hands, from a girl in San Diego to a woman who knew how to hang tough. Jack and Brianna wanted to take everything from me, but failed. I kept my bakery, I kept Evan, and most importantly, I kept myself. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect,